Welcome to today's training. Today we're going to cover table surfacing, and we'll look at this on several different ShopBot sizes. Surfacing a table is something should be your first cut when you first receive your machine, and it is something that you'll do routinely as you start cutting into your spoil board and using it. And just to show you what we're looking to do here is we're going to look at a table like this, the MDF surface that has been used and abused, and then we're going to make it flat like we see down below and have the table nice and flat and surfaced and smooth and ready to continue cutting with. Let's look at bit selection. The larger the bit, obviously the faster that it's going to surface your table. And when you have larger footprint machines, especially getting up into 4 foot by 8 foot or larger, having one of these bigger cutters will help improve time for surfacing your table. If you buy a desktop starter kit, you'll get this half-inch end mill that you see on the right-hand side, and a half-inch diameter cutter versus a 1 1/4 cutter versus a 2 1/2. The bigger the diameter of the cutter, the faster it's going to be. So our smaller machines do have a half-inch cutter if you get the desktop starter kit, and then the bit kit for a buddy or a full-size machine has this 1 1/4 inch. We have a large machine out back that we are constantly surfacing to keep it flat for our vacuum hold down, and we use this larger flywheel cutter here, and this one's nice because it has little carbide inserts. Okay, the first table we're going to surface is on this buddy. And just to give you a little heads up, why is there an extra piece of spoil board on this? A buddy comes straight from ShopBot with a spoil board made out of 1 inch Xterra, and it's larger than the actual cutting surface. This buddy here is a 32-inch wide, and it's just a personal preference. I like to glue on this extra spoil board. Yes, you do lose a little bit of the Z height, but now whenever you surface, you're staying above that existing original spoil board, and it allows you to overhang larger parts. So it's a personal preference. If you'd like to learn how to install this, go to our training page and watch the one on ShopBot Buddies, and you'll see how and why this more into depth, why this extra spoil board is on there. But you can see this one here is very used. There's obviously screw holes in it. It's been cut into. It's been really cut into, and it's going to be the first one that we surface here. So this is going to be on the ShopBot Buddy. The first thing we need to do is go and create a file that we can make our table surfacing. We will look at two different ways of setting up your surfacing file. If you want to just get right into it, built into the ShopBot software, you can go underneath Tools and go to Table Surfacer. And here, it's just a little app that you could go in and say, okay, my size of my table is 24 by 32. Type in the bit diameter, how deep you want to go for your depth, and the overlap. Then you can click your direction, clockwise, counterclockwise. There's also instructions here for it, but we're just setting this up to the size of that buddy table, and this is just a simple app. Again, we don't see where we can change feeds or speeds or anything here, so this is a nice way to get started. But when you start getting into the larger footprint, we'll actually go back to the vCarve Vectric software. But for this one here, go ahead and make surfacing table, click yes, give it a name, put it in an area where you can find it. I even like to add to the surface point 02 so I know how deep it's going. So that would be ready to save. It's going to allow you to preview it, and then you can turn your machine into run and cut it. So again, this is how you can do it through the ShopBot 3 software. And then what we'll do for the next example when we get to the larger format machine is go into the Vectric software and actually create our own surfacing file where we can change the direction of the cut and set it to make it a little bit more efficient of a cut. So let's let this file run on our buddy. So we set it up in the ShopBot 3, and it's just going to go back and forth. Starts in the middle, works its way out. And that .02 depth that we go, it's going deep enough to get down and get the bulk of this. There is one big oopsie over there on the right-hand side that's pretty deep, and this surfacing file isn't going to get it. But the depth that we're going will get a nice, clean, flat surface on our buddy top. I would like to emphasize, if you're using a spindle, just to refresh, that you do need to click the collet and the collet nut together before you install it. And you saw me shake it there, because if it's going to shake and come apart, it could do that while you're cutting. So make sure the collet and the collet nut are sprung together, hand tighten it, and then when you go to tighten with your wrenches, you can go ahead and with one hand get it tight, and then one more like oomph to get it a little extra snug. You don't have to over tighten it, but you want it good and tight and then clip together. The next one we'll look at is a desktop. And you can see this again, this spoil board has been chewed up pretty good, cutting out projects. And just keep in mind, on a desktop or a desktop max, your spoil board is held to the aluminum with steel bolts. So once you surface down too far, you could get into hitting those, and that's where you'd want to replace your spoil board. For this case, let's go ahead and set up the job in the Vectric VCarve or Aspire software and show you a few tips and tricks that you can do. So we're going to set this one up in VCarve Pro. Just create a new file. The desktop measures 24 inches in the X, 18 inches in the Y. The material is our spoil board, so we'll have to zero to the top in this instance. So 24 by 18, okay. And I like to do this. I actually like to create a rectangle and then cut a little bit in the negative and the positive X and Y direction. And the reason for that is, think about your 1 1/4 inch cutter coming in here with a diameter of 1.25, and just think of that little radius down on the bottom of that. Is it going to be able to get down in there if it's only cutting inside of that rectangle? We're going to have a little bit of material left. So if we cut outside, which the ShopBot does have a little bit extra space, we can cut in a little bit of negative and then a little bit of positive, and that gets rid of that bottom corner. So to create the first rectangle here, bottom corner 0, 0, 24, 18 is the size of your material. You can hit create. So you could go in here right now and actually create a little bit larger rectangle and do this all in one step. But just to show you, I select that vector, and then I go here to offset, and I'm going to go outwards, say 1/4 inch. That should be approximately enough, and delete the original. Bam. So now that we have a little bit larger rectangle that's in the both negative and positive X and Y directions, when we go over to create our pocket toolpath to surface this, I'll go ahead and select that rectangle. And again, if you're going to do a 0.02, 0.03 or your average cut depths, it's going to take quite a while with that 1/32 end mill. So in this case, here's where we go and select, and then grab, if you either have a 1/2 inch straight bit or a 1 1/4 inch spoil board for this case, and we'll just call this one surface 0.02 so I know what it is. Calculate. It's going to show you in the preview here that something's still not right. So always use your preview as a check. Why is it having all these blue lines? That's going to show us with something with a lot of time in it. 2 hours and 28 minutes to surface a desktop doesn't seem right. So always go back and go, look here, let's play detective. Somewhere on here there was a large area clearance tool selected. So it was going to try to do that all with the 1/8 inch. So always check your work. Now when we hit calculate, it looks a little bit better. And we're down time-wise now to about 3 minutes. So that's a little bit better. I'd always check your work. Check it in the 3D preview. Check it in the 2D. See your tool path. Turn on the solid. You can see what it's going to cover. You can see that it's out past it in positive X and Y. And then we would save this surfacing file and take it out to the ShopBot and cut it. Alright, the file is starting to surface, and in the VCarve Pro we created our surfacing file using the offset, which starts in the middle and then it works itself around in both X and Y direction. Now there's a lot of changing of axes, so this isn't going to be the most efficient way of doing this, especially when you get into a larger machine. For a desktop, cut takes a couple minutes, no big deal. For a larger machine, we'll actually have that run back and forth along the longest axis. So here's a 4x8. You can see that it's been cut into, it's been drilled into, and then this would be one that we're going to surface. This is, you see the different depths, the drill holes. Again, a big table like this needs to be surfaced. once it starts getting chewed up like this. And then if you have a vacuum, you'll want to stay on the surfacing to keep it nice and flat and to keep any of these spots from where the air could take out. So again, we're looking now at setting up a file for a full size 96 by 48 ShopBot. So let's go to our vCarve software and create a new file. And this one we're going to set up to be the most efficient surfacing file yet. So this one here was a 96 by 48. Again, we're zeroing to the top, which is our spoil board. Bottom left corner, hit OK. This time we'll go in to create the rectangle. And instead of messing with the offset, we'll actually say, hey, we want to start this rectangle negative quarter inch and then have it cut 96.5 inches by 48.5. And we'll go ahead and hit create, and that gives us a rectangle a little bit larger than our ShopBot cutting surface. And this will allow, again, to get that bit radius cut out past. So we'll switch to toolpath side, and this time when we create our pocket toolpath, we're going to have the same bit, same cut depth, but this time we're actually going to set up as a raster toolpath. And a raster versus an offset, we can just see by looking at the picture, offset is stopping and moving in both axes, where the raster works its way along depending on the degree that you set it up, which axis. In this case, the 96 inches is along the X, and it would be the most efficient one to have a raster running back and forth along our longest part of our table. It's only going to slow down, ramp down, and step over on the two ends of the X, not in the Y this time. So go ahead and call this one again our surface 0.02, calculate, and we can see what it's going to do. And the time on this tells you it's about 30 minutes. Again, you have to set your scale factor up to what is on your operating computer. This one runs in about 15 minutes. With this being set up, I'd have to adjust my scale factor. Again, check your 3D, check your 2D, make sure everything's right before you hit save and go out to the machine and cut. Now we can see the ShopBot is running back and forth along its longest axis. And where it ramps down here at the end, steps over and ramps up, we've taken out a lot of the movements of moving in both X and Y. Now it's just stepping over when it hits the end of each table. So it's a more efficient cut is what it is. It's going to save time. No one will really, it's not that exciting watching the ShopBot surface going from what's cut down to flattening. So, but this way you're going to get more efficient. And when you're surfacing too, you need to make sure you check your machine for the spindle being accurate as far as perpendicular to the table. I can see some lines, but I run my hand across there and I don't feel anything. So that means that my spindle is mounted perfectly square on the gantry. If you did feel ridges, you'd want to get your manual out and look what it would take to adjust. The last question would be when to surface your table. So if you're an operator that has a vacuum table, the flatter and smoother that you can keep your spoil board, the better vacuum hold down you're going to get. And the picture here where there is no vacuum being used, it's just going to surface the table once it gets so chewed up that things aren't sitting flat again. Or it might also have to deal with the moisture in your shop environment. Are you in a temperature controlled unit, or are you where humidity could be present or not there the next day? So this table here would get surfaced every couple of weeks just to have a nice flat table. Depending on the moisture in the air, it could warp, swell, shrink. So just taking off 20 or 30 thousandths every couple of weeks still allows you to use that spoil board for a long time without having to replace it. And yes, eventually you will get down into a smaller spoil board, thinner, where it does need to be replaced. So thanks for showing up today and learning about surfacing your table. Please use our website for other reference. There's lots of training on here, videos. We have different support techniques, and it is all useful resources. And also get on here and sign up for our newsletter. You get a monthly email about what ShopBot's up to, what's new, and and we might even be in your area for a camp or a show. So thanks for everyone showing up today. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.